Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so you were saying that you would nominate two people, one from each team, to be the judge or to agree the rules of the game.
No, we need 2 people from each team.
2 from each team. Okay.
Because in the old days, you know, everything has to be kind of supported. And if just 1-to-1, then there are chances of saying that, oh, you never said that. Even if you had said it, you would say that you never said that before, and so on and so forth. So in order to supplement one another, you have 2 from each team, so that any dispute can be solved. And then also, I mean, the ultimate arbitration will be done by the captains or the leaders of both the teams.
So do the rules change according to the teams that meet, or are there standard rules that everyone will go by?
There are standard rules, and today we have BHUTAN, Bhutan Indigenous Games and Sports Associations, or in the communities. We kind of improvise our own rules, and that usually takes place before the game, and it is not very different from the rules of BHUTAN. So now going back to the points again.
Yes.
Now as I said, if we have your arrow here, it's 3 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, anyway, 2 points. All the way down below is 1 point. And then sometimes it hits here and breaks away. And if the arrow is falling down on the ground, no point. But sometimes it pierces it and then sticks in the ground, you get 1 point. So 3 points, 2 points, 1 point at the bottom, and then 1 point also at the bottom if your arrow is stuck on the ground.
Do you have...
But if your arrow is still dangling in the air, you get 2 points.
Do you have judges who are close to the target who can actually see if an arrow hit or not?
Sure. And sometimes there are no judges, but the players. Each team normally has more than 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 on each team. So when some are shooting, the others are on the other side, indicating where the arrow had landed or so on and so forth. So indication is also considered very important. And we really have to have active players. If somebody is very lazy and kind of reluctant to entertain, then he's not preferred. So archery in the Bhutanese context is not an individual talent. So it's a team game. So you really have to have some kind of cooperation. And people have to be very active who are in the forefront on the other side to indicate each arrow of your team members, you know,
yes,
where it had landed and what kind of adjustments are necessary. So now, coming back to the points again. So if you hit the target, and if your opponent or any member of your opponent hits the target, then the points are nullified. So no points for both the teams. So suppose if we have like 5 hits from our side, challenged by another 5 hits from other team, so nobody gets a point in that round. So that's, and then if there are no hits on the target, and if your arrow landed on the ground next to the target, measurable by the arrow. You know, if the one arrow kind of reaches within the one arrow's distance, then you get 1 point. But whoever's arrow is closer to the target gets the point. So for instance, if my team, we have like 5 arrows stuck around the target and no opponent arrows are around the target, then we get 5 points. Even if there are no hits on the target, we can contribute 5 points to the main game. And the game normally is set, if we have more number of team members on each team, game is like 25. Whoever reaches 25 first wins the game.
Right, I see.
Whereas if we are playing individually, like 2 or 3 people on one team, then the games are usually, or maybe sometimes 2 people are playing against one another. The game is set at 5. Whoever reaches 5 points wins the game. And then 5, 7, 9, 11, we prefer to keep those games at odd numbers. So I remember playing like for 15 and then 21, 25. So something like that, that is all kind of proposed before shooting. And then if the opponent's arrows are closer to the target and yours maybe like 5 arrows near the target, but further away than your opponents, then all these arrow points are not counted. Press to the target takes the point. So if there are no opponents in between the target and your arrows, then you get all the points. But if there is one arrow that is nearer to the target, then everything gets nullified. So I think the counting of the points is quite clear, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We were saying that we needed to appoint 2 people from each side because they are also the ones to keep record of the points every round. And these 4 people keep record, and every round you have to kind of see who is the nearest and who's got how many points. So every round you get some points or no points.
So I can imagine a game can go on for quite some time, because even though you are gaining points, your opponent can take the points away, and then the judges are having to see whose arrows are closest, if you've missed arrows, etc., etc. So how long can a game go on for on average?
So usually when we shoot, our distance between it's not like archery elsewhere where you have a big target and then you shoot from one side. But ours is, we have 2 targets placed 145 meters away, and each player carries a pair of arrows. And from each side, you only shoot your 2 arrows, but you shoot one of the arrows and your opponent shoots one. And then again, you shoot your next or the final arrow and your opponent does the same. And we also have to identify the target, you know, which side belongs to which team. So maybe if the direction we are shooting is from north to south, so one team takes the charge of one of the targets. So we call it our target. So our target is in the north. And then suppose if we are shooting from the south, our player has to shoot first, followed by the opponent. And from the other side, when you shoot from the south, they will shoot first and then you shoot later. So alternately. And once these two opponents have shot, they move on to the other side and they help in indicating the later shooters. So therefore, it takes many, many rounds, particularly if both the teams are competent, because if there are competent shooters, they have equal number of hits on the target. So you don't have to count those arrows that had landed on the ground on the sides of the target. Because if there are two arrows on the target, two opposing arrows on the target, then no matter how many arrows are stuck very close to the target, nobody gets the point. So therefore, many rounds are just nullified and then you have to keep on shooting. So usually, if you are organizing a game, a friendly match, it is a matter of a day-long shooting.
Right.
It normally starts at about 8 or 8:30 in the morning and ends by 5 or 5:30 in the evening.
Wow.
And of course, at lunch, there is a lunch break. About an hour.
So it's really a whole day occasion.
Yes, it's really a whole day occasion. And then on some of the videos that I sent you, there are spectators cracking jokes, pulling your legs. Some people are cheering, others are jeering.
Yeah, let me just share some of that actually. So this is one of the videos that you sent.
Yeah, so there, somebody from their team made a hit. And then the other team members are celebrating the hit by dancing and singing.
Sorry, I just need to upload that.
And the ladies, usually they don't come to the target area. So the ladies' participation is usually they dance in the center of the target area.
Yes.
So that it's not so dangerous. You are exactly in the middle, so arrows will be flying to the other side.
Yes.
So but here in this picture, you are seeing these ladies are jeering. You know, they are trying to distract the shooter.
Yes.
So that only happens when the game is going to be decided. Last 1 or 2 rounds before the end of the. Suppose if the game is 25. So when the points are going from 21, 22, then you ask the ladies to come, I mean, just as the number of teams, 2 teams. So there will be 2 teams of lady dancers also.
I see.
So your team ladies will come at one side of the target, which means if suppose we are shooting, our target is on the south, we call our ladies to the south. And then when we are shooting, they will sing melodious songs and kind of help in kind of cheering to shoot better. But then when your opponent shoots, they will call all personal remarks and make
insults.
Insults and and they will shout and also distract. And but from your side of the target, you experience that. But once after everyone had shot from this side, then you go to the north.
Yes.
So when you shoot from the north, you get the same treatment by the ladies from the other team.
I see.
So, so that becomes very interesting. And also, archery is one way of socializing.
Mm-hmm.
So, suppose the games are being played between two communities.
Yes.
Then all the people from the two communities come and witness the game and crack jokes and metaphors.
Right.
The whole day is entertained, not only by archery, but by spectators, and it's a kind of a socializing affair.
Yes. Excellent. Now, I mean, 145 meters is quite a long distance, and the target is actually quite narrow. So how proficient can some of your archers be? Do you have people who hit a lot of the time, or is it kind of just hit and miss?
Jihad, the proficiency is not very important here, especially if two communities are contesting.
Mm-hmm.
It is again interesting. The archery game is like a war.
Yeah.
So when you propose a game with your opposing team, you really have to come into an agreement of when we will be playing, and then so on and so forth. And at the back of the the back of the agreement, you know, I mean, you agree with your opponents based on the instructions given by your astrologer. Because you need to use astrologers to help you win the game. And if you have the right elements and right energies on your side, even if you are a bad shooter, on that day, you will make the most vital hit.
I see.
Your arrow may be flying hayway, but the wind will bring it back and put it on the target.
Right.
And in the old days, of course, there are other ways and means of challenging in the archery.
Yes.
You know, some people, if their opponent's arrow is coming straight onto the target, then what you could do is, you know, you see our
clothing.
There's a little empty space here.
Yes.
So you feed the arrow onto your arm. Not onto your arm, but below the arm, and it hits your clothes.
Yes.
And it kind of avoids the target. And then sometimes you use your bow, and suppose if your kind of friend or if your teammate, his arrow is short of the target. Sometimes you put your bow there and let it skid from your bow, and then it hits the target.
I see.
Nice.
Yes.
So these kind of little tricks are there, but these are also subject to do's and don'ts that you decide from the beginning of the game. So, because these things can lead to disputes and arguments, and usually lands up in fights, fist fights.
Really? All right. Okay. So, it can become quite a serious event if there's a disagreement.
Yes, it's a serious event, because what we do is, if we win the game, then all the obstacles, mishaps of that community is passed on to the losers.
I
and
see.
the losers has to bear it for the whole year.
Wow. Okay.
It is believed that all the bad luck is coming onto you.
Quite serious.
So both the teams will do anything to win the game.
I see.
So usage of astrologer, then performing rituals. Some astrologers would try to use black magic, like making little effigies of the opposing team members, and then tie them with strings so that in the following day the opponents will perform very badly. That is also there. And then we have local protective deities. So if you want to win the game, you really have to appease your protective deities.
I see.
And then you go to the protective deity's shrine and seek help and ask them to come to the archery ground. And sometimes you go with a riding horse to receive him on the horse. But from that temple, you don't get him as such, but you get him, you take a little white scarf and rub it onto his statue and assume that he's coming along with the scarf and then rides the horse. And interestingly enough, the horse, after traveling for maybe several hundred meters, begins to sweat. And it, by the time it gets to the archery ground, it's sweating a lot of sweat. And it's an indication that the deity had been riding the horse.
I see. Okay.
And so that is also there. And then sometimes when you know that your opponent is going to bring his deity, then there's another anecdote. In order to get rid of the deity, you try to put some kind of unclean stuff on the way of your opposing archers. And those include like dead bodies of the horses or dead bodies of the dogs or dog poo. And sometimes some people go up to the extent of collecting menstrual stains from the lady.
Really? Right.
And they try to put it on the tree, on the way under which the opponents are supposed to come. So you have to be not only a good shooter, but you also have to be very shrewd. So you don't use the normal way. And then also the astrologer would recommend from which direction you have to get into the target area first time in the morning. So accordingly, you have to time it out with your opponent maybe a few weeks or a few months before in the agreement that, we will be coming there on such and such time, and we are going to walk in from north to south or south to north, or east to west.
Right.
So that way, it is very intense. And usually in other games, they say you have to take a good rest the night before the match. But here, with the use of astrologers and rituals, sometimes we don't sleep. And next morning you are just there.
Right.
And hoping that the deities are on your side.
Interesting. This is very, very, very fascinating. The way that how seriously they take it, and also the extent to which they will try to influence or put off the opposing team, and also that the losing team will take the I guess the bad traits or the mistakes of one particular community for a whole year and until the following year. So it seems that, like you mentioned, astrology is key to whether a team will win or lose, and it's a very important part. So I guess the astrologers are very important people in Bhutanese society as well.
They are. I mean, astrology is very important, not only in terms of archery, but any kind of sicknesses or deaths, you know, they are always there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, construction of houses, the good days to erect your doors and windows, good days to put a roof on top of the house, or maybe do your foundations. Everything has to be based on astrology.
I see.
And now, I mean, that is one part of archery, that when you play with or against your opponents from a different community.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, you know, it also becomes less, or it becomes lighter, whereby you don't, now even the BHUTAN, the Bhutan Indigenous Games and Sports Association, they ban use of astrologers in archery, because they want to make it strictly sportsmanship kind of sport.
Yeah.
So the use of astrologers during the tournaments that are held by BHUTAN, we don't use the astrologers openly, but who knows, some teams are using it secretly. You never know.
Yes.
But as much as possible, you are not supposed to use. And also other games, you know, when local games, for instance, if 5 or 6 of us decide to play archery, we don't use astrologer, but we also agree on a smaller game, and then fix some kind of a bet or stake that you agree. And a lot of gambling also takes place in archery.
How often?
Sometimes with the.
Sorry. How often would you practice, shooting archery? Is it part of daily practice, for example, or religious practice, or just whenever people are available?
Well, whenever there's a practice, when you practice, I mean, it's very rare that you just practice on your own. Usually you will ask your neighbors or other friends to join. So it'll be 4 or 5 or 5 or 10 people practicing. And when you practice also, it's not just shooting back and forth. You always set a game and agree upon a game, and then the reward or the stake. Yeah. You know, suppose for every 5, sometimes we say a 5-point game, the losers have to pay the winner maybe $100 or so. Right. That you have, both team has to agree, of course.
Yes, of course.
Or maybe $50 or $20. That you agree and play on that. And then sometimes you also bet by the hits. Every hit, there is no points being calculated, but whoever makes a hit, the others who cannot make a hit would have to pay maybe $10 to the ones who made the hit.
Okay, so
that way also
it can become quite costly as well.
Archery is costly. And many people also believe that archery, because you go to archery and then you socialize with other ladies, and so there have been instances of misbehaving. So it's generally understood that an archer is considered as not so family or his wife.
I see.
So that's the downside.
Okay. For someone coming up in Bhutanese society, they want to get married or be respected, is it very important that they know how to practice archery? If someone doesn't know archery, for example, does it affect them socially? Not
really. there are even Bhutanese. For instance, my dad,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't play. My late dad, he never played archery.
Right.
But in a normal conversation, especially when archers are there, they would refer him to be like a lady like, why don't you wear a lady's dress? Because you don't play archery. So
Right.
these kind of little jokes takes place, but it's not a big stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays there are many who don't play archery as well.
Mm. Is it something that is dying out with modern society? I'm sure, modern technology is coming in and the youth maybe are being influenced by external things. Are they still holding on to their culture of archery, or is it something that you see is slowly waning and disappearing?
Well, sometimes I feel it's kind of disappearing. At other times, it looks like it's reviving.
Mm.
So it is still there, but based on the game structure of traditional Bhutanese archery, we have also allowed people to bring in modern equipment all the way from America, those pulley bows or compound bows.
Yes.
So
compounds.
these days we have all these carbon arrows as well.
Mm.
So, but following the same traditional rules and regulations. And that is there. But otherwise, I think the tradition, how modernization kind of overtakes everything. So Bhutan, we are supposed to be kind of landlocked and a champion of preservation of what you call the culture and tradition.
Mm.
But every now and then there's a kind of a challenge. So here, even in archery, now, even the ladies want to take up archery.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, it used to be a taboo.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you have a game, what you call a tournament, a real match with a team from the other community,
Mm-hmm.
then no ladies are allowed to touch the bows and arrows of the archers.
Right.
It has to be stored at a very serene place in the shrine room.
Mm.
And no players are allowed to sleep with their family.
Mm-hmm.
So all archers would have to sleep in a kind of a confined room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And make sure that nobody mixes with women.
Interesting.
And so now these things are getting challenged because like anywhere else, we also believe in gender equality. So that is a bit of a concern because there are some lady shooters, and sometimes they do better than men.
Well, exactly. This is very much the case. When the women try their hand at something that the men are used to doing, more often than not, the women turn out to be more adept and more skillful, which obviously for the men is maybe sometimes hard to accept. But it can sometimes be a good thing when the women are allowed to maybe express that freedom and ability. So, I'm sure this is something that may take some time to change in the society, but it may have a long-term benefit. Does Bhutan have a modern archery team, or a team that enters the Olympics or anything like that?
We do have Olympic archers as well. And there also, I think one lady, she is like world number 11 or so. So she participates in the Olympics.
Excellent.
And there are men team as well,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't been so successful as yet.
I see. I see. Very interesting. And one thing I just wanted to go back to the equipment. You talked about the bow making is very straightforward and doesn't take a lot of time. What about the string making as well? Is that something that anyone can do, or do you have you know, people who are specialized in making the strings?
This also can be done by anybody, but you need some assistance. You need at least 2 people to make the string.
And roughly how heavy are the bows when you're pulling them, the poundage? Do you know, have any idea how heavy they'd be pulling? Because to shoot 145 meters with a rather long arrow, I would guess at least, you know, 40, 50 pounds or in excess.
Yes, I think it has to be plus 40 pounds. But depending on your own strength, you can make those according to your strength.
Yeah.
And if you want to keep it lighter, you have to keep it longer. And if you make your bow shorter, it becomes stronger.
Yes, yes. Interesting. Excellent. I think we covered most of the points, TSHEWANG. It's been very fascinating to learn about the culture and the practice of archery in Bhutan. I appreciate your time and showing us some of your equipment. Is there anything, just to wrap up, is there anything that you would like to add to our conversation that we haven't maybe covered?
Well, the Bhutanese archery, it is very interesting and very exciting, yet it hasn't made much influence in the outside world. I had traveled to America, Hong Kong, Korea, but I mean, you just, one person or 2 persons cannot really bring the whole kind of environment of Bhutanese archery there. You need at least 10 or 12 people.
Yes.
That's the minimum to make the impact of archery. Whereas 1 or 2 people means it's monotonous. There's no singer, no dancer when you're shooting. So we really need to have the whole set. So I mean, the ideal set would be like at least 20 people, 10 on each team. Otherwise, I mean, it doesn't bring the whole atmosphere to anywhere you go. You know? You cannot celebrate much. And of course, most of our metaphors, when you try to translate it into English, it loses its flavor. And it doesn't really become that interesting as it used to be here in Bhutan. When you say it in our language, it's so funny. But, you know, that's where I tried it and it doesn't work.
Maybe we need to learn more Bhutanese.
Yeah, but I think more than anything, our archery game is all about singing, merrymaking, shouting, basically like screaming. And it is not a silent game. It has its own charm and it's very interesting. When, I mean, if I have an archery game tomorrow, I can never sleep the night before. Even if it is not so important to match, I would still be looking forward to it. And but I mean, when you really demonstrate it individually, it doesn't really become that interesting. So I think if you really want to see Bhutanese archery, one has to visit Bhutan.
Absolutely. And the best person to speak to would be yourself, of course. So anyone that is looking to visit Bhutan, I think TSHEWANG is the perfect person. His English is near perfect, excellent demeanor, and very, very knowledgeable person. So TSHEWANG, I'd like to thank you once again for your time It's been
Pleasure.
a great opportunity to meet you, and I do hope that we can meet one day either in the West or in the East. But I hope that the archery, traditional archery there does persist for many, many centuries to come, so that you know, it can be preserved and we can learn how it was done traditionally. So certainly very interesting. So thank you once again, and if we do meet again sometime, we'll speak to you then.
Thank you very much, Jihad, and all the best with your coaching.
Thank you.
And if I ever show up in London, I'll look for you.
Absolutely. You would be our guest. You are welcome anytime. Thank you, Tawan. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.